The drive from Fort Myers to Naples felt automatic, the same route I had taken hundreds of times without thinking. No call ahead. No reason to announce myself. The villa had always been there, steady, unchanged, waiting, whether anyone spoke its name or not. The gate didn't open the way it should have. A sedan I didn't recognize sat in the driveway. One light was on where there shouldn't have been any. When the side entrance came into view, the handle looked wrong. The lock wasn't mine anymore. Keys stayed in my hand as the door gave way too easily. Footsteps moved across the floor. A woman's voice carried from deeper in the house, casual, unguarded. She laughed at something small, the kind of sound people make when they believe they belong where they stand. Daniel Moore appeared first. He didn't look startled. No hesitation. He had on a t-shirt I'd never seen, barefoot, coffee mug in hand, like it was any other afternoon. The woman followed a few steps behind him, younger than I expected, wrapped in one of the throws my daughter used to keep on the couch. Daniel spoke before I could. "You shouldn't be here like this." That sentence landed wrong. "This is my house," came back steadier than expected. He shifted his weight, glanced toward the woman, then returned his attention without lowering his voice. "I have the right to be here. I was her husband." The word was placed carefully like a shield. Husband. As if that settled everything. No argument followed, no raised tone. One question felt enough. "What paperwork do you have?" A pause crept in, not long but telling. Daniel's shoulders tightened, then loosened again as he chose a different angle. "You know what she meant to me," he said. "After everything, I had nowhere else to go." The woman looked down at her mug. No one asked her name. "That doesn't answer the question." He sighed, rubbed his face, leaned into frustration he wanted me to carry for him. "You don't have to make this harder than it already is." That was the moment the ground shifted. Not loud, not dramatic, just clear. The conversation wasn't about legality to him. It was about pressure, about using loss as leverage. Nothing more came out of my mouth. Standing there longer would have turned into something else, something public and messy. Shoes went back on. Keys slid into my pocket. Daniel followed me to the door. "We'll talk when you're calmer," he said, already certain I would leave. The gate closed behind me without resistance. From the sidewalk, the villa looked the same as it always had. Maintained. Orderly. Still pretending nothing had changed. A number came up on my phone without searching for it. The security company answered on the second ring. "This is Michael Harris," I said. "I need access to the camera logs. All of them." The office sat a few blocks from the gated community, practical and unremarkable. A sign by the door listed services in plain lettering: security management, access control, data retention. Nothing about what people actually came here for. Laura Bennett greeted me without surprise. She had the look of someone who dealt with complaints for a living, and had learned not to react too early. "You're Michael Harris," she said. I pulled the file. A short walk led to a small conference room. No pleasantries. She placed a tablet on the table, then a form, sliding it across with a pen. "Before we open anything," she said, "I need you to understand what you're asking for." "What does that mean?" "It means once you see it, you can't unsee it. And if there's evidence of a crime, this stops being personal." The pen stayed where it was. The form didn't move. "I'm not here for closure," I said. "I need facts." She nodded. Not impressed, not dismissive either. "Sign here. This confirms you requested access and understand the legal responsibility attached to the footage." Ink met paper. The motion felt routine, like approving an invoice. Laura tapped the screen and brought up the timeline. The first clip opened without ceremony. Daniel entered the villa 4 days before the funeral. A keycard worked the gate. He carried 2 suitcases. The woman followed with boxes, moving freely, familiar with the layout. No hesitation at the door. No glance around to check if they should be there. Laura adjusted the speed. The footage jumped forward. They cooked, ate, slept, lived. Days passed in minutes. Clothes appeared in closets. Personal items replaced what had been there before. The house didn't look borrowed. It looked claimed. A knot formed low, steady, not sharp enough to stop anything. Another clip started. Daniel stood near the hallway cabinet. He opened it once, then again, slower the second time. A folder came out. Papers were spread across the counter. He read carefully, phone in hand, taking photos. The woman watched, asking something I couldn't hear. He shook his head and put the folder back where he found it. Laura leaned forward. "That cabinet isn't part of the rental inventory," she said. "It's not typically accessed unless someone knows what's stored there." The next file played. Daniel crouched by the safe. Not frantic, not rushed. He tried combinations, paused, then tried again. After a moment, he stepped away and wiped the surface like someone aware of leaving traces. The word temporary lost meaning. A breath went out slowly. Hands rested flat on the table. The screen kept going. "You okay to continue?" Laura asked. "Yes." She didn't ask again. Another time stamp appeared. This one landed 2 days before the funeral. Daniel returned with a locksmith. No uniforms, no marked vehicle. They spoke briefly. The man left. Daniel tested the door. It opened. Laura stopped the clip. "This is where things cross a line," she said. "Unauthorized access, potential fraud, at minimum trespass with intent. Save everything came out before thinking about it." "Already doing that?" she replied. "But don't confront him. Not yet." A drive slid across the table. She labeled it, then added a second copy. "One stays here. One goes with you. If this escalates, documentation matters." Silence settled between sentences, heavy but useful. "People assume these situations happen fast," Laura continued. "Most don't. This took planning." The word stuck. Planning. A phone buzzed. A number from Naples downtown. The real estate attorney answered on the second ring. "Mark, it's Michael. I need to see you today. What's going on?" "There's a problem with the villa." A pause. "Then, come by. Bring whatever you have." The drive waited in my palm, warmer than it should have been. Laura stood as I did. "One more thing," she said. "If he knows you've seen this, he may try to move quicker." "Sell," I said. "Or destroy records," she added. "Or both." The hallway felt longer on the way out. The door closed behind me without comment. Steps carried forward, measured automatic. Keys turned in the ignition. The drive was placed carefully in the console, not tossed, not hidden. Just there. The car rolled into a parking space and cut the engine. The drive stayed where it was for a second longer before being picked up. Mark's office had the same order it always did. Files aligned, desk clear except for a legal pad and a mug he never finished. The drive went straight onto the table between us. "I need you to watch everything I said. From the beginning." He didn't ask questions. The footage played while he took notes, stopping once to rewind a section near the safe. When it ended, Mark leaned back, folded his hands, and stared at the ceiling for a moment longer than necessary. "This isn't casual," he said. "This is preparation." A drawer opened. He pulled the villa's file, then the original will-flipping pages with care, rather than urgency. "Your daughter's estate was clean," he continued. "Simple. No disputes, no add-ons. Another folder appeared thinner, newer. This, however, was filed 6 weeks ago. The paper slid across the desk. A supplemental codicil. My daughter's name printed clearly at the top, her signature at the bottom. It looked right at first glance. The same looping capital. The same spacing she'd always used. Mark tapped a date. This is the problem. The number sat there, unremarkable to anyone else. That day he said she was admitted. Sedated. According to medical records, she couldn't sign anything. The room tightened. So the signature likely copied, or signed under circumstances that wouldn't hold up. He paused. Either way, it's challengeable. Something shifted then, not outward, but somewhere that hadn't been touched yet. Questions rose that had been kept down for years. Conversations cut short. Calls returned late. Times when silence felt easier than pushing. What if I made this possible slipped out before it could be measured? Mark didn't rush to correct it. People don't manipulate in a vacuum, he said. They look for space. That doesn't make you responsible. A phone vibrated on the desk. Daniel's name filled the screen. The first message came through. Michael, we don't need lawyers. Let's talk like family. Another followed quickly. You know how fragile things were at the end. Don't turn this into something ugly. Then a third. If you push this, everyone's going to see you as the man who took everything from his daughter's husband. Mark watched without comment. The next message dropped the tone altogether. You won't win this. The phone was turned face down. He's testing you, Mark said, seeing where the line is, and if I pull back, then he keeps going. A pen rolled between my fingers. The thought of years tied up in court pressed in. Depositions, filings, waiting rooms, watching a private loss become public record. I don't want this to become a spectacle, I said. It already is, he replied. You just haven't agreed to participate yet. He stood and paced once, then returned to his chair. I need to be clear. This won't resolve quickly. He's going to delay, appeal, create noise. And if I walk away, Mark met my eyes. Then the codicil stands. The sale moves forward. You lose control of the property. Another vibration cut through the room. An email notification this time. Mark opened it without asking. His jaw set. He's filed intent to transfer ownership, he said. Through a brokerage. That landed harder than the messages. He's trying to sell it. Yes. A breath came out slow. The idea of strangers touring the place, inspecting walls my daughter had leaned against, made the decision feel smaller than it had moments before. What's the next step, I asked. Emergency injunction. We freeze the asset, challenge the codicil, preserve evidence. And if he escalates, he will. Mark slid a document forward. Read this tonight. We'll file first thing in the morning. The phone buzzed again. Another message. This one shorter. You're making a mistake. The screen went dark as the device slipped back into my pocket. Paperwork stacked neatly. The drive returned to my hand. Mark walked me to the door without ceremony. Whatever you decide, he said, decide it, knowing this isn't about punishment. It's about boundaries. The hallway carried on with its usual traffic. Someone laughed near the elevator. A copier hummed somewhere out of sight. Keys came out again. The car waited where it had been left. As the door closed, the phone vibrated once more. The notification banner showed only the beginning of the message. Listing agreement confirmed. The email from the brokerage arrived before noon. It wasn't dramatic. Just a standard notice professionally worded confirming that the property had been listed and was now active in their system. Mark called minutes later. He moved fast, he said. Filed under the codicil. They accepted it pending verification. So they didn't check, I said. They checked enough to protect themselves. Not you. Another call cut in before anything else could be added. This one came from the bank. A polite voice explained that accounts tied to the villa's maintenance had been temporarily restricted. Routine review, she said. Ownership clarification. Nothing personal. Nothing personal had started to feel expensive. Utilities still ran. Taxes still accrued. Legal fees began stacking up without waiting for permission. Access to the property, however, was now blocked. A lockout by paperwork. The day kept moving. A message from Daniel followed shorter than before. Listing is live. This doesn't have to get worse. No response went back. By mid-afternoon, Mark asked me to come by again. Documents covered his desk this time. No attempt to keep things tidy. He's leveraging time, Mark said. Pressure through momentum. If a buyer appears, this becomes harder to unwind. What about fraud, I asked. That's where we pivot, he replied. Up to now we've been defensive, contesting ownership, slowing him down. And now we document criminal behavior. A knock interrupted us. Laura stepped in without ceremony. She carried a folder thicker than before. Found something, she said. She laid out printed logs, timestamps, access records, system errors flagged and ignored. Someone copied segments of the camera data before you requested access, she explained. Tried to overwrite part of the archive. Sloppy work, but traceable. Daniel Mark asked. His login credentials, she said, used from a device registered to the villa's network. The room shifted again, not emotionally this time, but structurally. The pieces began to align. He was covering his tracks, Mark said. Or trying to, Laura replied. Which tells us he knew the footage mattered. The folder closed. Laura stayed standing. This crosses into unauthorized access and evidence tampering, she added. I'll submit an affidavit if needed. Please do, Mark said. She nodded and left as quickly as she'd arrived. Silence filled the space she vacated. Not heavy, focused. Mark leaned forward. This changes our approach. We're no longer just arguing over a will. We're showing intent. And if he claims ignorance, I asked. He won't, Mark said. He'll claim necessity. The word landed the way Daniel always intended it to, as justification, as excuse. The phone buzzed again. Another message from Daniel. You're freezing accounts now, that's low. That one earned a reply, short and measured. All communication goes through my attorney. No answer came back. Mark slid a packet across the desk. This is the emergency motion. Temporary restraining order. We ask the court to halt any transaction related to the villa until ownership is resolved. The pages felt heavier than paper. Each signature line carried consequence. This won't make him stop, Mark said, but it will slow him down. And after that, we pursue the fraud angle, harder for him to spin. The pen rested between my fingers longer than it should have. The hesitation wasn't about doubt anymore. It was about habit. Years of choosing the path that caused the least disruption. That path had led here. The pen moved. Ink met paper. Mark gathered the documents, clipped them together, and stood. I'll file this within the hour, he said. You should expect pushback. I already do, I replied. Outside, the parking lot had filled. Engines started. Doors closed. People returned to their schedules. The phone vibrated once more as I reached the car. Daniel's name appeared again, followed by a single line. You don't know what you're doing. The calls started before sunrise. Not one or two. A stream. Missed calls stacked on the screen, followed by messages that shifted tone by the minute. The first sounded almost reasonable. Michael, please. We can talk this through. 10 minutes later, the words hardened. You're blowing this out of proportion. By mid-morning, restraint disappeared altogether. You think a judge is going to side with you after what you're doing? The phone stayed face down on the counter while coffee went cold beside it. Outside, Naples carried on as usual. People waved at intersections. Familiar faces appeared at the market, at the gas station, at the small cafe near the marina. A few lingered longer than normal eyes, staying a second too long before looking away. One of them finally said it. "That's rough," she offered, lowering her voice. "Going after your daughter's husband like that." The word "going after" settled in the space between us. "He moved into my house," I said. "Without permission." She nodded, but the discomfort didn't lift. Well, grief does strange things to people. It wasn't meant as an accusation, but it landed like one. Back in the car, the phone lit up again. Another message from Daniel. "You're making me look like a criminal. A memory surfaced without invitation." A night years ago, when my daughter had called late, voice tight, asking if she could stay the weekend. No explanation. No request beyond space. The answer back then had been careful. "Let's talk tomorrow." Tomorrow had always seemed safer. That instinct to delay, to avoid forcing a moment, pressed in again. The idea of stopping crossed my mind for the first time. Dropping the injunction. Letting lawyers handle whatever came next at their pace. Stepping back, Mark didn't let that thought settle. He filed a counterclaim, he said over the phone, "accusing you of withholding estate assets. That's not true." "Truth isn't the issue," he replied. "Narrative is." Another layer unfolded. Daniel wasn't defending anymore. He was attacking, reframing the story with himself at the center. If this goes public, Mark continued, it gets messy. Depositions, media records, people will talk. They already are. Yes, and that won't stop. The fatigue hit then, not sharp. More like weight, the kind that made standing feel unnecessary. "What happens if I walk away?" I asked. Mark paused before answering. "Then he controls the timeline, and the property, and the story." A knock came at the door. Certified mail. The envelope was thick, official, impossible to ignore. Daniel's latest move sat neatly printed inside. A formal request to access the safe and original documents citing rights under the supplemental codicil, the same document that shouldn't have existed. "He's escalating," Mark said when I read it to him, "trying to legitimize what he already took. Can he get access?" "If the court believes there's urgency, maybe. That's why we need to act faster." The phone buzzed again. This time Daniel left a voicemail. "I didn't want it to come to this," he said, voice strained but controlled. "You're forcing my hand." The message ended without goodbye. By afternoon, exhaustion set in fully. Papers spread across the table. Notes blurred together. The option to stop fighting looked tempting in a way it hadn't before. Let the noise fade. Protect what little peace remained. A different memory surfaced then. Not dramatic. Just a moment. My daughter standing in the kitchen years back, arms crossed, saying nothing while Daniel spoke for her. The silence between us had felt respectful at the time. Now it felt like absence. That thought stayed while the phone rang again. Mark's voice carried no hesitation. "The court issued a preliminary summons," he said. "Collier County. Hearing scheduled. When soon?" A date followed. A time. The next step had been chosen without asking. Paperwork kept moving whether anyone slept or not. Mark spread documents across the table, separating originals from copies, tapping margins where questions lived. "Look at this," he said, sliding a page closer. The signature. At first glance it matched. The curve, the spacing, even the pressure points looked familiar. He overlaid another page beside it, an older document my daughter had signed years earlier. "See the hesitation here?" Mark traced a spot with his pen. "Same break, same angle, too similar. You're saying it was lifted. I'm saying it was copied, not forged from memory. Taken." The word carried weight without drama. A detail turned decisive. Laura arrived a few minutes later, folder under her arm, expression unchanged. She didn't sit. "We pulled system access logs from the storage server," she said. "There's a timestamp you need to see. A printout landed between us. Date. Time. User ID. Daniel accessed the archive 20 minutes before the codicil was uploaded to the county system, she continued. He didn't have authorization. He bypassed it. Mark nodded once. That places him at the source. It also shows an attempt to erase the access record, Laura added. Unsuccessful. The room didn't react. No celebration. No relief. Just alignment. For the first time since this began, something close to hope surfaced. Not relief, not certainty. A narrow opening, enough to breathe through. I don't want to assume anything I said. You don't have to, Mark replied. Evidence speaks for itself. The phone rang before the thought could settle. Daniel's number again. This time he left a voicemail that played automatically. Let's meet, he said. No lawyers. Just us. I'll walk away if you drop the emergency motion. The offer sat there, wrapped in urgency. Mark didn't look up. Don't. I wasn't planning to. Another message followed text this time. You're tearing the family apart. That one didn't get a response either. By afternoon, the tone outside shifted. Word traveled faster than filings. A post circulated in a local group. Someone shared Daniel's version. A grieving widower pushed out by a cold, controlling father-in-law. A neighbor stopped me near the mailbox. He's having a rough time, she said gently. Maybe there's room for compromise. There was, I answered. He chose otherwise. She nodded, but the distance stayed. Dinner invitations dried up. Conversations ended sooner than usual. People avoided choosing sides by stepping away altogether. Mark called that evening. We're ready to escalate, he said. Civil fraud, evidence tampering, unauthorized access. What does that change? It removes the option for private resolution. Once filed, it's on record. A pause followed. You sure? The question wasn't about confidence. It was about cost. Yes. The filing went through the next morning. Confirmation came back within the hour. Daniel didn't respond right away. When he did, the message was brief. You'll regret this. The words felt smaller than before. Later that day, Mark sent an update. The court accepted the request. Investigation approved. Another step. Another line crossed. At the grocery store, a familiar face turned down a different aisle. The cashier avoided eye contact. Small adjustments, cumulative. The phone stayed mostly silent after that. No calls, no messages. Daniel had shifted tactics again. Documents were reviewed late into the evening. Laura's affidavit joined the stack. Mark flagged sections to highlight at the hearing. This holds, he said. He can't explain his way out of this. The thought didn't bring satisfaction. Just clarity. A final email came through as the night wore on. Subject line, filing acknowledgement. Mark forwarded it without comment. The hallway outside the courtroom filled early. Lawyers spoke in low voices, folders tucked under arms, shoes tapping against the tile with practiced impatience. A clerk called names. Daniel stood several feet away, jaw-tight hands, moving too much for someone trying to look composed. Mark nodded once and stepped ahead. No advice was given at that point. Everything that needed saying had already been said. The hearing opened without ceremony. The judge set expectations quickly. This is a factual proceeding, she said. Emotions are not evidence. That line stayed with me. Mark began by submitting the timeline. Dates, access logs, filings, each item introduced cleanly without commentary. Laura's affidavit followed. The unauthorized access stood on its own, supported by records no one disputed. When the camera footage played, no one reacted. Daniel kept his gaze fixed forward. The judge asked questions. Mark answered. The chain held. The signature analysis came next. Enlarged copies placed side by side. An expert explained the overlap, the identical pressure marks, the improbability of coincidence. Daniel's attorney objected. The objection was noted and overruled. My role remained narrow. Identification only. "Is this your daughter's signature?" the judge asked. "Yes." "Did she sign documents during that period?" "No." Nothing else followed. Daniel took the stand after a short recess. The shift was immediate. His voice carried urgency, an edge of frustration that hadn't shown before. "I was protecting what she wanted," he said. "She trusted me. Did she authorize you to access the archive?" Mark asked. "Yes." "When?" "At some point before." "Can you provide a date?" Daniel paused. "No." Mark didn't press right away. He let the gap sit, and the locksmith. Mark continued. Was he acting on her instruction as well? That was about safety. Safety from whom Daniel's answer came too quickly. "From you." A murmur rippled through the room. The judge raised a hand. "Answer the question," she said. Daniel tried again. The explanation wandered. Dates blurred. The story shifted. The woman was called next. She walked in slowly, eyes on the floor, posture stiff. Daniel didn't look at her. Mark kept the questions narrow. "When did you first discuss selling the property?" Her answer came out steady. "Before the funeral." Daniel's attorney stood. "Objection. Overruled," the judge said. "Continue." "Who initiated that conversation?" Mark asked. Daniel. "And did you tour the house with potential agents?" "Yes." "Did Mr. Harris know about this?" But Daniel leaned forward, whispered something sharp. The woman flinched but didn't change her answer. The image Daniel had presented cracked in full view. Not dramatically, just enough. When he returned to the stand, control slipped further. His voice rose, words came faster. He spoke about grief, about entitlement framed as necessity. The judge stopped him. "This is not a character hearing," she said. "Stick to the facts." By the time closing statements arrived, the shape of the case had changed. What began as a dispute over interpretation now carried weight from actions taken deliberately and quietly. Mark kept his final remarks brief. "This court doesn't need to decide who suffered more," he said. "Only who crossed legal boundaries." The judge reviewed her notes. The room waited. "Effective immediately," she said, "all transactions involving the property are suspended. The supplemental codicil is referred for further review under fraud statutes." A pause followed procedural expected. "Ownership remains unchanged pending outcome." Daniel exhaled sharply. His attorney leaned in, whispering. The woman stayed seated, hands folded, eyes ahead. The hearing concluded without a gavel strike. People gathered papers. The clerk called the next case. Mark packed up methodically. No smile, no comment. The hallway filled again as doors opened. Daniel brushed past without speaking. The woman hesitated, then followed him out. Outside, the sun sat high. Traffic moved. Lunch crowds gathered. Mark stopped near the steps. "This isn't over," he said, "but today matters." "I know, go home," he added. "Rest if you can." The final ruling arrived by email, first then by certified mail a day later. No dramatic language, no commentary, just a clear statement that the supplemental codicil was invalid and the villa remained under my name alone. Mark called after I'd read it twice. "It's done," he said. "Ownership is settled. What about Daniel? He's barred from access. The fraud filing stays on record. Civil system permanent. No celebration followed." The call ended the way most of our calls had, brief and practical. Daniel didn't reach out. No messages, no requests to talk. Word traveled without his help. In Naples, reputations don't collapse overnight, but doors close quietly. Invitations stop coming. Agents stop returning calls. People stop offering benefit of the doubt. That was enough. The locksmith arrived the following morning. New keys, new codes. The process took less than an hour. The old property management contract was terminated the same day. Paperwork replaced familiarity. Boundaries replaced assumptions. When the gate closed again, it did so on my terms. Back at work, nothing changed. Meetings continued. Shipments moved. Problems were solved in the same order they always had been. Colleagues asked how I was doing. Answers stayed short and factual. Things are settled. That seemed to satisfy most of them. Weekends shifted slowly. Not by design, but by necessity. The villa no longer felt like a place to monitor or defend. Time opened up where vigilance had been. Long walks replaced errands. Trails near the coast offered steady ground and predictable distances. No one asked questions there. Conversation wasn't required. Movement was enough. A volunteer coordinator approached one afternoon after seeing me more than once. "We could use help on Saturdays," she said. "Trail maintenance, search support when needed." Let me know when I replied. The first morning started early. Tools were handed out. Instructions were brief. The work was physical and straightforward. No one asked about court dates or family history. Later that week, Laura sent a short message. System audit completed. Everything secure. I thanked her. Nothing else needed saying. The villa remained mostly untouched. Furniture stayed where it had always been. I didn't redecorate or replace things out of principle. The space no longer needed to prove anything. One afternoon, a message from an unknown number came through. "This is Daniel. I just want to explain." It stayed unread. Silence had done enough damage already. It didn't need another opportunity. Mark checked in once more to close out the file. "If you need anything later, call," he said. I won't came the honest answer. The case ended without ceremony. No statement, no press, no final conversation to give it emotional weight. Life narrowed back to manageable size. Groceries, work, trails, occasional dinners with people who didn't ask questions they weren't entitled to. One evening after returning from a long walk, I sat at the table with paperwork spread out. Nothing urgent, just bills and schedules. The routine felt earned. A thought surfaced then, simple and unforced. Silence had always felt like protection. A way to keep peace, avoid conflict, prevent loss. It had also created space for others to decide things that weren't theirs. That understanding didn't come with regret, just clarity. Keys were placed back in the drawer. The light was turned off. The door locked without hesitation. The next morning followed the same rhythm as the last. Coffee, emails, a drive to work. Control didn't announce itself. It returned quietly in the absence of interference, in the ability to move forward without explaining why. That was enough.